Good afternoon to you. Mark Suttoth, HurricaneTrack.com here. Welcome to Friday, the 6th day of October 2023. Looking ahead at the weekend, we have a few areas to watch out there. Of course, the remnants or post-tropical version, whatever you want to call it, of Philippe impacting Bermuda right now. That'll be heading up towards Atlantic Canada. And Maine and vicinity is a big, powerful, sprawling, messy system. Then we got another area that we're going to watch out here to see if it develops into a named storm. It'll remain out over the open Atlantic no matter what it does, and if it does develop, the name would be Sean if it becomes a tropical storm, and it could add 3 or 4 more ace points to the roughly 130 ace points that we have right now. And we have to watch some stuff in the eastern Pacific. Could be some impacts, almost certainly, it looks like, from Mexico. So let's get started. Over the National Hurricane Center site, there's Philippe. It is now post-tropical, just south of Bermuda. We'll talk about what that means more in just a moment. Now, down here on the southwest coast of Africa, we do have an area that's going to come off and probably try to develop. 50-50 shot right now, according to the National Hurricane Center, in the long range. And our thumbnail is made up of this graphic today, but there you can see the development area. Again, just not a lot of ridging out over the Atlantic. That's not there. So these systems don't come all the way across and bother our friends in the islands too much. Although Philippe did bring some impacts over here. But this one certainly doesn't look like it'll have a chance to do so. Meanwhile, going back to the home and then clicking on Eastern Pacific, there is Lydia. Lydia is going to head back toward Mexico, it looks like. We talked about this a couple of days ago. Now the forecast track indicating that that could be a possibility. GFS is a little bit stronger overall than the other models. We'll have to see what happens. I know that like roughly in this area you've got Mazatlan. I have driven this part of the Mexican coast way back in 2021 for, what was it, Pamela? You know, I would go to Mazatlan. I could literally fly in there via American Airlines. If it were going to make landfall there. There's no radar down here to really help you as an interceptor or a chaser or just a vacationer who wants to see it on radar. So we'll have to see. You know, I'm not going to rule it out. If this heads closer towards Mazatlan, I might consider going out there for that if it's going to be more than a tropical storm. But I also want to make sure that I am in West Texas about a week from now, assuming it's going to be clear for the annular eclipse that's coming up. That doesn't mean it happens on an annual basis. No, it is the way the moon is. It's at its farthest point in its orbit, so around the Earth, and it's a little bit further away, right? So it doesn't quite fill up the entire solar disk. So you get this ring of fire deal. We call that an annular eclipse, ANNULAR. And I'm scheduled to go see it and observe it and stream it and whatnot Saturday, a week from tomorrow. So we'll see what this does, and does Lydia mess up those plans, and so forth and so on. We shall see. Looking at the satellite imagery of everything, now this is what we're talking about when we mean post-tropical. So the post-tropical guts of Philippe are right in here. Then we've got this non-tropical area of low pressure over here. And the whole darn thing is a very large area of wind and rain and squalliness. And all of this is going to be headed up eventually towards, not Massachusetts, I screwed that up, didn't I? Towards Atlantic Canada, Nova Scotia, right, the Bay of Fundy, the Gulf of Maine. And it's going to be windy and squally and kind of chilly and, you know, just whatever, like blustery and big coastal storm. And then we've got this big front coming in, bringing some true fall weather. There's some reinforcing cold air behind it. And all of this is going to kind of combine and get this big pinwheel effect, bringing some snow to parts of southern Canada over the weekend. Meanwhile, you can see on this particular satellite vantage point, there is Lydia. This is another system that's trying to develop. And there is still a chance that something gets caught in here and pinwheels into the Bay of Campeche. But with all these westerlies and the dip in the subtropical jet coming down, anything that gets in here is going to either be sheared or, you know, basically shoved down into this area. So impacts to the United States are going to be much harder to come by between now and the end of November. Not impossible, but a lot harder over the next few weeks, which is great, right? But we still have to watch out down here for our friends, and certainly the Caribbean. You never know. It's not over till it's over. And I just want to remark on this. Look how clear it is, basically, from the Rockies west. That's pretty awesome. Midland, Odessa, which is roughly in here, under that circle, somewhere in there. That's where I'm headed for the eclipse next weekend. Let's have like Utah clear skies for Midland, Odessa next weekend. Can we do that? That'd be great. By the way, the path of annularity comes down something like this, roughly, and then different areas of the country will have different percentages of the sun covered up, and you should check it out. It's actually there's a great website about it and the total solar eclipse next year on April the 8th. It's called GreatAmericanEclipse.com. I'll try to remember to put a link to it in today's discussion. Hey, eclipses are part of the weather. It's just space weather, right? Very good. All right, moving on along to the east in that satellite vantage point. There again is the big sprawling area of post-tropical Philippe and the non-tropical low. And then out here, off the coast of Africa, I like how we have transitioned over towards darkness out there. Speaking of astronomy and just whatever space-related stuff, you know what that line right there is called? It's called the Terminator. It is, and it's not an Arnold Schwarzenegger thing. It is truly, that's the word for it, the demarcation between daylight over here, nighttime over here. That line is the Terminator. And just southeast of that Terminator is our next system. And this could develop as it gets out into the Atlantic, as I showed you from the National Hurricane Center homepage. But conditions out here not too favorable now because, my goodness, we're almost done with the first week of October. So no, we don't expect much to happen from here on out. This, my friends, is a great example. Sometimes it is served to me, and it's just easy to show you. Look at all that vorticity, or the energy there, with X Philippe, put a P right there, the post-tropical Philippe, and an N in here for non-tropical low. All that energy out there, that's the vorticity. And yeah, it's still impactful, but it's not your typical classified, labeled storm, like tropical storm. It's not that anymore. It's a scientific thing, but boy, this really, in terms of classification, this really helps to underscore how that energy is spread out over a larger area. That's Lydia. Put an L down there for that. That's what they're supposed to look like. You guys mostly know this by now, but a reminder every once in a while is perhaps helpful, and sometimes nature cooperates. We'll watch out here in the coming days, and we'll see what happens with that next system that could eventually become short-lived Sean. We shall see. GFS thinks so. First, let's pay attention to this area down here, and let's see what happens over the next few days. The impulse comes off. It gathers strength quickly. It's fairly small geographically, spatially, and it ramps up okay there, right? And it gets out into the eastern Atlantic, becoming a named storm, at least looking at the GFS, lasting a few days. That's 6 days out. So if it ramped up like the GFS is suggesting, maybe 6, 7, 8 ace points, maybe. We'll see. Maybe it becomes a very small hurricane. You just never know. This is a data-sparse area. You got the Cabo Verde Islands, but there's not a lot of data out here for upper air soundings and things like that. So we'll see what happens. And you notice, too, as we get to the weekend here, which is upon us, there's the very large area of X Philippe over here and the non-tropical low right there. That whole mess pinwheels into the northwest Atlantic, bringing, again, rainy conditions, windy, squally, big waves, kind of raw up there, definitely. And then it pinwheels in. And look at that, just a massive area of cyclonic rotation there, the vorticity signature. We're talking huge, very large area. And these counterclockwise winds around this, yeah, that's a huge area up there over southern Canada and even dipping down into parts of the lower 48. Elsewhere, not much going on. We'll run this all the way out to a week. And there you go. That's a week out. And hopefully, like I said, I'll be over here in Texas. I wouldn't mind a trip to Mexico if it's needed, but hopefully I'll be in Texas because the annular eclipse will be a really neat thing to see. But nothing else really out there as we get through next week. European tends to agree. Let's refresh this because we should have Yep, almost out to a week on the 3-hour increments. There's that energy associated with Philippe and whatnot. And then the euro not quite as aggressive with this system out here, as you can see, just to draw your attention better. 63 hours out, it's not very enthusiastic. We'll see. Maybe the GFS is on point. Maybe it's not. But notice, too, these little systems over here. This one in the East Pac tries to develop and come into southern Mexico, switching over to the East Pac domain, if you will, over on the Tropical Tidbit site. Run this back to the beginning. Lydia is this thing here, pretty prominent, and it does try to make its way back toward Mexico, but this one seems stronger in southern Mexico, so a couple of areas to really watch in the coming days. And then some of that energy does come across the high terrain and work its way into the western Gulf, maybe leading to, and you can see there's some curvature to the 5,000 foot wind barbs in here, and that, could be rainy and squally for the Gulf. That's an impact, and onshore flow could create some tidal flooding. You never know, especially as we're getting towards new moon. That's why we're going to have an eclipse, by the way. You never have an eclipse during like a half moon. That's a whole other story right there as to why. But, the euro starts to suggest maybe some activity in the northwest Gulf sheared, so we're not looking at low pressure of any significance, but maybe a big rainmaker, kind of squally out there for oil interests and coastal interests. We'll watch this. This is 135 hours out. That, of course, is Lydia. Puerto Vallarta down there, if I'm not mistaken. Mazatlan, roughly about right there. So we'll see what happens with Lydia. And just a reminder here from our friends at QuickDam, you got to be ready. You got to be ready ahead of time. They got a bunch of products that can help you to do so with the threat of heavy rain for parts of Canada and New England. Remember, these are available at Home Depot and Lowe's, among other locations. Be sure to visit their website. I'll put a link to it so you don't have to remember it. I'll put a link to it in the description of today's video, and you can see where they are available. Of course, you can get them on Amazon, their products, and they'll deliver them right to you. Awesome, awesome technology to help you get ready for freshwater flooding, and a great alternative to traditional sandbags for sure. Just a reminder from our friends at QuickDams. All right, let's get this online for you and wish you guys a great weekend ahead. I will be off the next couple of days. Got a lot to do, family stuff, and it's busy around here. Plus, there's not a lot to talk about, and it'll make you miss me more. And when I get back on Monday, we'll have a lot to discuss then, I am sure. So you guys have a great weekend ahead, as always. From all of us at HurricaneTrack, thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you again on Monday.